Have you ever just wanted to quit because a student keeps blurting out in class? ADHD, especially impulse control, can be one of the biggest challenges in the classroom. So today I've drawn some of my information from renowned experts like Dr. Edward Hallowell, and he not only writes about ADHD and works with families and individuals with ADHD himself, but he also has ADHD, so he understands it as a medical professional and as an individual. I've also turned to resources that are online that you can easily access yourself, such as the Canadian ADHD Resource Alliance, otherwise known as CADRA, and Children and Adults Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, the website there, also known as CHAD, and they are all instrumental in developing effective classroom strategies. So I know that managing a classroom with one or more students with ADHD, or even if they're not diagnosed, students who exhibit the symptoms of ADHD can be very challenging. It's overwhelming at times with the blurting and the movement and the repeated explanations about what they're to do. So, but taking a look at what's going on inside of the student, it can make it difficult. ADHD can make it difficult for your student to focus, pay attention, listen, and put effort into their schoolwork. All of those things which you look at with frustration and going, why can't I get this student to work? Meanwhile, they want to, and they're experiencing the stress of not getting started. So some common indicators that you may see in your classroom is that your students might be fidgety, be restless, they might talk too much, or disrupt the class. Now let's keep in mind that we're teachers, and it is the role of a medical professional to diagnose individuals with ADHD, but it is important as a teacher for you to recognize the indicators. They may be an opportunity to talk to parents about that, but also you have to be careful about that. I've done a whole course on how you can work on that with students and with their parents. But for now, let's just say it is good for you to be aware of the symptoms so you can know where to take it. So, what is the classroom impact of ADHD? So, no doubt that this is going to have an impact on all of the students, not just the student with ADHD. So, this is going to cause some learning difficulties, which will lead to an impact of their grades. Now, keep in mind that what they're doing is struggling to obtain grades. That doesn't mean they're unable to learn. Um, as far as cognitive function, it means being that the neurodivergence in their brain is making it difficult for them to access the knowledge that they're completely capable of obtaining and sharing. It makes it difficult to establish positive relationships at home and at school because the impulse control, their peers don't like to be interrupted. They sometimes struggle with turn taking and sharing. So this can then lead to low self-esteem. And of course, those low self-esteem, when we pack it in and pack it in and stuff down our feelings, can also trigger behavioral issues. I know that even as recent as the last 2 years, I've become more aware personally um, as to how my voice goes up when I just find the world around me is overwhelming. I start to take shorter breaths, and I've learned to calm myself in a lot of situations. And I'm learning more about situations which I have not yet calmed it in. And so that self-awareness and learning those strategies has made a huge difference for me. So the question is, what can we do in our teaching that offsets some of those uh, challenges that the student with ADHD is experiencing, which is impacting the rest of the classroom? And so what I want to do is focus on strategies. Of course, there are strategies that can be very personalized and tailored to just the one student. I'm a bigger fan of strategies that are powerful and positively impact your entire classroom. Because if a student who's struggling to focus can benefit from it, from higher levels of engaging activity, more engaging activities, can't everybody? So tailoring your teaching methods can significantly minimize ADHD's impact. So try incorporating some interactive activities and visual aids, which engage students with ADHD, and these enhance their learning experience, but everybody else's too. And it's when we're talking learning experience, there's all sorts of things the student, as you know, is learning in the classroom. It's not just about social studies and math and science. It's also about managing their feelings and appropriate choices. So things like visual aids, so the shape of the day on the wall, that is a visual aid that helps the student to know where they are, depending on your classroom rules for going to the washroom. It tells them how long they have to wait or when the next break is. Um, it gives them visual aids like that, give them a lot of information. If they're struggling to get started, having an anchor chart up in that subject area is fantastic. The challenge is if there's too many anchor charts up, that can be a visual distraction. But again, these kinds of things, not just visual aids, but visual aids are a good example, enhance their learning experience. So teachers who are supporting students with ADHD in the classroom need to adopt a flexible teaching approach that incorporates frequent changes in activities, brief breaks, and interactive elements. Now, I know when we hear frequent changes in activities, I have read so many Facebook posts from teachers that say, what are you doing with transitions? Okay, so transitions can be difficult for students with ADHD. So why am I recommending frequent changes in activity? Well, first of all, it can be frequent changes in activity within the same and they're still sitting at their desk. For example, when I finish teaching a math lesson, out go the whiteboards and the markers, and they have a chance to pause and regroup. So, but what it really helps students with ADHD is for them to have routines that they can navigate, which support them tremendously. So again, this is a teaching practice about establishing routines. So let me give you an example. When my students transitioned from whole class instruction to a game, we had a routine that I followed each time. And this is, we would do a quick review of the rules and rules the students would need to follow and the tools that they would need to get. And I'm not speaking a lot during that time. I'm receiving information as they try to remember themselves. Students learn best from each other. Okay, quick distribution of random partner cards, which was huge in my classroom. They had random partners for I very few activities weren't random partners in our class. Sometimes they were working with their table groups. I had 4 desks at, the equivalent of one table. Um, and that was a quick moment of fun as they discovered their partner, and it built community, which is another flexible teaching strategy that enables each student to know, first of all, that they don't have to work with that student all the time, because that can be a lot of work if you always put the strong focused students with the struggling unfocused student. It also means that they get to know each other and they've got a shared focus, which is a strategy for developing relationships where they don't have to really dig in and get to know each other, but they can learn about each other in a safe way that is focused on an activity rather than each other. And then they have to settle down immediately and focus on the activity. And by that time, everybody's got their tools, and I'm wandering around and I'm just using proximity to help them calm down and to breathe and to make sure everybody's got something. And so, of course, if there are students that struggle more to get started and focused, their peer is saying things like, do you want to start? Have you got your marker, whatever? And so they've got that reminder to get their tools. The peer wants to get started. And, I come beside them and I just ask a simple question like, okay, guys, how's it going? What's up? And so all of these things are supports for your student with ADHD. So you've got the routine of getting there. You've got the change. The routine is supporting the transition, and this transition is supporting that need for different activities. And all of these things are building that neuroplasticity in the brain, helping that student to be successful. Of course, working with students, any student in the classroom is so much more so much more, excuse me, than what they're just learning in the classroom. They're with us for at least a third of their waking hours, but they also have parents and sometimes two sets of homes. And so it's really important to have open communication with the parents and collaboration with our support services. These things are vital. these partnerships not only support students at school, but they also create a seamless support system at home. And keeping in mind that whether or not this student is diagnosed, because we're talking about students with ADHD, but the key here is to support students that have these indicators, the symptoms I mentioned earlier. It's not essential for them to have a diagnosis because we don't get to diagnose. But if we offer them the supports anyways, whether or not they actually have ADHD, whether they just have impulse control or executive skills functions, they're still receiving that support. And if their parents are uncomfortable with the idea of receiving a diagnosis, and for a variety of reasons, it may be that they don't want to put their child on medication. And so they are just refusing to go and get the diagnosis because what's the point? So there's all sorts of reasons for not wanting that. So keeping open communication with parents about what's going on at school may give them some insight and understanding into how they can help their child at home, and can be very encouraging and build up the student and the parent student relationship, or parent and child relationship. And you may learn from them as well. The other thing is about involving support services. When we are in consistent communication with support services, and this is what I found as a special ed coordinator. So in some ways, my role was um, not most important to the student, but most consistent with the student. Because if I'm supporting a student from K to 6, I'm the teacher that can really say, oh yeah, but if you look back to K, this is what it was like. So they've actually come a long way and they can do this in this area. I can encourage, I have knowledge, I can share and show how much the student has grown, and encourage the next strategy or idea. So communication with your learning support is vital, not just for you, but for the child and their ongoing service. So as I discussed earlier, touched upon, without support, ADHD can negatively impact students, teachers, and classmates, causing learning difficulties and behavioral issues. It's crucial to adopt strategies that alleviate these challenges, because one of the things that I know is we're not in charge of the diagnosis. We're not in charge of the decision as to whether or not a student Medicaid. And I've seen far too many teachers hang their hat on if they could just get that student medicated. Let's be clear, at least where I live, you could start the process of um, referring a student for diagnosis, which you're not going to be able to do right away. You've got to get to know the child, but you're going to refer them, talk to them, to the parent. Parent has to see the GP. The GP has to refer them to the pediatrician. That can take a while. The pediatrician has to do diagnosis, and then they're going to play around with the meds for a little bit. Even if this parents, everything goes according to plan and that student gets on medication, it could be May or June before the student is actually on the medication. So what you need to do, what I encourage you to do, what I hope you will do, is take steps to implement strategies that support you and the other students in the classroom, so that you can calm the chaos in your classroom, because that's what you have control of. So we talked about flexible teaching practices earlier, and flexibility is key for any teacher, regardless of whether or not you have a student with ADHD in the class, because the day can shift on a dime, or surprise plans can come up, or problems can occur, or there's an alarm or whatever. So flexibility is so important as a teacher. So you need to adopt methods that include frequent activity changes and interactive elements which will cater to diverse attention spans. Instead of, if you have one way of teaching, I know that when I started teaching, getting me to write on the board, I'm a talker, and getting me to write on the board was really hard one. But I figured a way, and I've got terrible handwriting, by the way. I was a 1-2 teacher, and I thought, oh, I do not have perfect primary printing. But you know what? I managed. I figured it out. And we can do that. So even if it's not your strength as far as your teaching style, you can do it, and you will learn and grow and get better. So, some important things include implementing personalized strategies, such as breaking tasks into manageable segments, and this helps students to focus better. So, some of the strategies I'm about to share with you are initially designed for supporting ADHD, but these prove beneficial for every learner in your class, and which nurtures an inclusive and effective learning environment, because it's not the whole class over here, and then this one student over here gets it done this way. If you implement these strategies so they are accessible to all your students, then there's no exclusion. There's no, look what that guy has to do. Okay. And sometimes that is necessary, but the more you can do it otherwise, the less it is constantly pigeonholing a student. So, first of all, provide clear, concise instructions. I wrote a quick numbered breakdown on the board. So if we were doing, something that was 4 steps, I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I could keep it to 1 or 2 words, just as a reminder. Now, I taught 1, 2, and sometimes they couldn't all read it. So I might do a little drawing if that was appropriate. If there was a noun in those 2 words that I could draw beside it, that they helped. But they can also turn to the neighbor and say, what does number 2 say? Okay. And in art, I actually completed the project at each step. So if we were doing decorating little Christmas trees, come to mind right now, I might have number 1 and just the cutout Christmas tree. I might have number 2, cut out the Christmas tree and get the glue and put on the glue where you want it. Number 3, put the decorations on the tree where you want them. And number 4, use a marker to color in the lines where you want the tinsel to be. I mean, that's not exactly how it worked, but you get the place. There were 4 different samples on the wall, and it was a visual, and no reading was involved, and it created independence for the students. And does that take time to prep? Absolutely. But you know what? You do it 1 year and then you've got it stored for the next time you want to pull out that project. So it actually makes your life, the number of hours and the amount of stress it saves you is far more than made up for them by you having to create that. Okay, so break down tasks into smaller manageable segments. Um, Now, for example, one example is that Christmas tree. They can see a little bit at a time that they have to do, and that's manageable steps. But let's talk about something else. Rather than telling students, write a story, and a lot of primary teachers are doing this anyways, but give them a graphic organizer, beginning, middle, and end, character setting. And so they could write down those component parts of the story, or they could draw a picture of those component parts of the story. And so then they had an idea was coming, and then it's almost ready to just come right out. And that's kind of a foul way of saying that, isn't it? And that structure, they could then get started, and they're building neurons in the brain that really help them to follow that sequence. They're learning from that. So number 3, use activities that remain the same, but increase in difficulty. So in writing, I used if we were using writing prompts, I might use the same prompt. Write a story about animals meeting in the woods for a birthday party. What does the celebration look like? So that might be the prompt that everybody gets. But there were 4 different levels of writing paper, from just blank for drawing a picture for our not yet writers, and with wide stripes and interlined for just a few lines on the page and still room for a picture for our writers that are just getting started, and then a few more lines but still room for a picture and still some interlines for the growing in writing, growing in ability writer. And then of course there's the multiple lines, no interline, smaller picture for our pretty much fluent writers. So, and in math, this might mean in my store, I've created color by code. And so you have the same at Valentine's, you have the same 6 pictures to choose from as a student. And if you're working at Make 10, you're going to work at Make 10. You're going to have the same rules. And it's not just, you're working on the same Valentine's activity, whether you're working on Make 10 or doubles. It's the students sit down at that center all year long. And if they pull out the color by code, they know what to do, even that it gets harder all year long. If you pull out task cards, they know what the expectations are with those task cards all year long. If you pull out Make 4, they know what that job is all year long. So you compile activities that are common. They know exactly what to do, even though the level of difficulty gets harder. It takes off that added level of stress and remembering what to do that can often be a struggle for students with ADHD and many students. So the truth is, ADHD also affects social interactions and emotional regulation, which is horrifying. It is so essential when you, for any student in any classroom, and but this definitely benefits your students with ADHD as well. Nurture positive peer interactions through classroom community building exercises. Whether that's them doing chores, and my students rotated through partners doing chores, whether it's empathy and peer support that is built as you sit down with them and work out through social challenges together. And I made that into a team building activity in my class. Everybody, I would invite students know that when they came in from recess and there was a problem, they'd bring their snack to my table because we always ate after our recess. So they'd bring their snack or their lunch to my desk and they would eat there as we talked through it. Um, until it was resolved, and it became a social time, breaking bread together. And I guarded each person's turn to speak, and they learned that the person had a different experience. And then, that doesn't mean that nobody was ever wrong. It means that everybody got a chance to speak and be heard, and they were understood. And so empathy, this helps to develop the empathy and peer support that are so important to helping students navigate social situations effectively. All your students. So teaching organizational skills, I've touched on this a little bit with the routines, but so the organizational skills is really important. The structured routines and clear expectations really alleviate stress and enhance focus. So some organization includes putting things in binders, which I did with my students, and I checked with an ECE certified person, and they said they're not too young to use binders. So there's a thought for you. But so that's one level of organization. But coming back to what I said earlier about the routines and clear expectations, your students aren't worried about whether or not, because they know your routine, you've alleviated the stress of having to know, okay, how do I play that game? You've alleviated the stress of, okay, what tools do I need? You've alleviated the stress of, oh, who's going to pick me, because you've got the random partner cards. They can focus on what you're saying, and they know that if they forget anything, the instructions are on the board behind them. So through those organizational skills, in another situation, when you say, okay, how can we organize this so you know what to do every time, they've experienced the value of it. So it's an easy sell. Let's set up an organizational system for this so that you can be independent in it. To support students with ADHD effectively, balance is key. A mix of flexible teaching and stable routines aids in minimizing challenges during transitions, and we've talked a fair bit about that. This approach not only caters to students with ADHD, but also benefits your entire class. And again, I've touched on that, and that's called Universal Design for Learning, covered in another blog post or video, also known as UDL. You might have heard of it. Implementing routines, whether lively or quiet, provides the structure that keeps your engagement high and your focus maintained. And I think I've kind of gone through with you how that works. So there's also assistive technology. Um, so if you use tools that will help your students, for one example that I used in my classroom that is available, because some assistive technology is really expensive and your learning support department may or may not have it, and it may or may not be available to you when you need it. But as a classroom teacher, there are some free programs that you can use, and most classrooms these days have access to some kind of computers or iPads or something like that. So free programs like the Epic book library, and this supports varied learning preferences. Okay, in that particular case, you can, like when we did the Great Bear Rainforest in our class, I had books that were all about sea otters that were in one section, and the students were only to look at those books because we were writing a book as a class. Everybody wrote different part of the same book that we created together, nonfiction book, as a class, and they worked together, and they made notes, and we refined it, and it was a whole process. But the point is, so I've got students that are at a pre-K reading level, in other words, they don't read, and ESL, and special needs, and I've got students that are easily at a grade 4 or 5 reading level. So something like Epic Books, you can pair the pre-K student and the grade 4 or 5 reading level student together, and they did end up together at times, but it's not appropriate to always put them together. So programs like Epic are great because they had books that could be read aloud, And, this is still harder for your ESL student, but they're working with a partner. For them, it's as much about the social interaction, the learning, using the learning tool, the opportunity to practice language as they shared their plan and wrote things together. But these, there's the visual, there's the book that's right there, there's the selection of the books. It's the reduced distraction because they weren't choosing from a whole bunch of books. It was just this one little section of books, and they were read aloud books. So many positive things. And there's all sorts of assistive technology out there like that's free to the classroom that will support you. So I've touched on this part a little bit in earlier in the video, but so one of the things that you can do to support students, and differentiation is important for so many reasons, but catering to different learning preferences with things like the visual aids that I talked about earlier, hands-on activities so kids can get in there and, use their fingers so they don't need a handheld fidget. Using auditory cues enriches the classroom experience for so many students because you might not have ADHD, but you might be primarily an auditory learner. By embracing these supportive strategies, we address ADHD's intellectual impact, excuse me, and foster a vibrant, inclusive learning community. Now, I've touched a little bit about collaboration and group activities when I talked about the partner cards and the type of activities and games that my students did together, but I want to be specific about this. Encouraging positive relationships through things like group activities and collaboration helps your students with ADHD develop essential social skills, because we may teach them social emotional learning, but they need a chance to practice it in a supervised environment, doing something engaging, shared with a peer, and making it a positive experience for both parties. An inclusive environment nurtures understanding and mutual respect amongst peers, and you can do that way better in the classroom than when it's supervised than was ever going to happen on the playground when they don't have anybody supervising and guiding the way for them. And again, I've touched on this earlier. Teaching organizational skills is vital for students with ADHD. With clear routines, structured assignments, and visual aids, students learn to manage their tasks effectively, enhancing their educational outcomes and reducing classroom disruptions. So these choices that you're making as a teacher, these strategies that you're implementing are the whole classroom, and the student or students with ADHD. So you might be wondering, are classroom management strategies enough? What about, without the medication? So I was really happy to run into a case study called Raising Healthy Children case study. And it started in the 80s, which is quite a while ago. And the beauty of that is that they have followed the students that it was implemented with, but they've also followed those same children as they became adults and then parents. And what they learned was fascinating. So first of all, what they learned was that the strategic support, so implementing strategies, does lead to improved outcomes. Teachers like you can incorporate these strategies and minimize ADHD's impact, turning classrooms into hubs of growth and opportunity for the students as they go forward. And what they learned as time went on is that the parents had developed more strategies. And I mentioned earlier that I have ADHD myself, and I don't take medications because when I met with the doctor and I shared the strategies that I use through diet and exercise and just a variety of things, breathing, practicing my calming breathing, self-awareness, learning from others, peer interactions, all those things that I do. So what is happening for these students, instead of what happened in my life, I had to learn it over a long period of time. But these students were used, the strategies were used, they were taught to them, and then those parents considered them a part of their life. They knew that those things were good in their life. So as parents, they taught it to their children. So depending on how much ADHD is neuro and how much it is environmental, it really doesn't matter, because you've got the parents who've got the neurodivergence have changed the environment of their children because they're teaching them those strategies. So you're not just impacting that, you're changing families generationally. Remember, the power of effective classroom management lies in your hands. Whether students are medicated or not, Your strategies shape their learning environment, reducing your stress and enhancing student engagement is the purpose of you implementing these strategies. All right. Are you prepared to shift the impact of ADHD from a classroom challenge to a chance for engagement and learning? Embrace these insights and strategies, and you will be on your way to creating a dynamic, inclusive environment for all your students.